preamble, and then we'll call the roll.
Perfect.
Okay, Mr. Pettit, you'll call the roll after the preamble. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to read for you the preamble of the Landmarks Commission meeting. Notification requirements of the Ohio's open meeting law. Under COVID-19 emergency declaration, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting have the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version, activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before speaking. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Next slide, please. All meeting activities is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube and TV20 for public view. We have provided a link to the meeting for those who wish to speak on a particular matter, case via our website and email. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Madam Chair, turning it over to you, Mr. Maurice. Change slide, please. Thank you.
Excuse me, we have a Kathleen Crowther that has her hand raised, wanted to make a comment. Or were we just testing? Oh, just a mistake. Okay, carry on.
Thank you. Mr. Pettit, call the roll, please.
Ms. Anderson? Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Kalikia? Mr. Kalikia? Mr. Dreyer?
Here.
Director Collier?
Here.
Mr. Harrison? Mr. Harrison?
Here. Sorry, I was muted.
Thank you. Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones? Mr. Strickland?
Here.
Mr. Tarasik?
Yes, here.
Ms. Trott?
Here.
Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings?
Here.
Mr. Brunges?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
I'm getting used to taking myself off mute. Okay, then we would like to call the 28th Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Next slide. We have nothing scheduled for public hearing action today. We'll move on to certificates of appropriateness. we'd like to call our applicants to turn off their mute at this time and state your name for our records and tell us about your project.
David Hess.
Mark Bigger.
Mike Cato, architect with Pen and Paint Builders.
Thanks everyone for starting these meetings. It's nice to get rolling again. We have Mark and his wife would like to build a new house on Maple Avenue. There was an existing home there years ago that is no longer, and this is his design that Paskovich Architecture has drawn up, and we've gone through Ohio City and Hoods and received approval and are looking for approval to begin construction, in a few months.
Excellent.
To add on to that, the house that was there, the existing structure burned down in, I want to say 2015. So what we're hoping to do, it's a fairly skinny lot up front for any of you that have seen the site plan. I'm sure it's one of these slides. We're hoping to put the house directly on top of where the old structure was to conform to sort of the look of the street as it used to be, albeit with a bit of a different front facade. And then tuck a garage in on the back left, which is really hidden from the whole street.
There is a detached garage, a two-car garage as well. I don't know where the site plan is. Do we have the site plan up?
Sure. Which slide would you like?
Didn't we submitted a site plan that shows the house and the garage in relation to each other?
Yeah, I believe that was sent.
I'm not seeing a site plan on here.
I know we got the garage drawings in a separate PDF, but I don't remember seeing a site plan.
Yeah, that's the garage there. Dave, are we able, I guess, do you guys want to see the site plan? And Dave, if so, can we email that over now and get that shown on the slides, or is that too much technology?
Madam Chair?
Is the host able to add it into the presentation?
I could not add it into the presentation. I could probably display it on screen if it's emailed, if you have a JPEG or a PDF.
Or can I share my screen? Or is it only you? I'll share yours.
I'm the only one that's got that privilege at this point.
Okay. I'll tell you what, why don't we talk about the, if there's any comments on the structures and materials or what, what questions you may have, and I will send this over. If someone in the text box could tell me the email address.
I'll type that right now.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us about the materials, and do you have a material board or a digital material board that we can look at?
Let's go back to the front elevation. If we could go back to that front, that first sheet. Maybe go. Is there another? Go to A1 maybe. There we go. That shows more of the house. So the house is essentially clad in fiber cement siding. All the horizontal siding you see is fiber cement. We're going to do mitered corners at the corners of the house. the vertical material you see is metal. So we've got a metal element that sticks off the side there. And we also have a standing seam roof on the house. So the colors of the house are a combination of gray, like a charcoal gray for the metal, and the clapboard siding is kind of a deep grayish blue color. The roof is charcoal gray. Again, I thought we had sent a colored perspective of this.
I did. I'm not sure what's happened here. So
We had all these drawings for Ohio City design review last week, and the drawings are sitting on the screen right now. Take into consideration the commentary that we received from Ohio City Design Review Committee. Some of the things that you're seeing here is we've got this sort of dramatic cantilever of the second floor over the porch. That's basically what our discussion revolved around the last meeting with Ohio City. And some of the comments that we had talked about there was that this was kind of like a modern sort of house, but it has like a traditional form. The cantilever that you're seeing, if you look at the right elevation at the bottom of the screen there, you see that we're going to be very careful as to how we align the siding up with that cantilever so that it's a very clean line there. We kind of went back and forth with Ohio City, whether there's columns and beams and railings and all that, but it kind of took away from sort of the more contemporary, modern sort of thrust, I should say, of this design. And when we tried adding columns and stuff, it just started looking too, I don't know, it just started lost all its personality. So what we compromised on is doing sort of an interesting detail at the bottom of this cantilever. You could, and I apologize, I can't point to it, but there's a little sliver of a charcoal gray element that sort of helps support this clapboard sided gable element. And I wish I could pull up I have a color. I don't know if I showed you something on my phone. It's easy to see or not. I can't even see where I am. If you guys could see me, you could probably see this little sketch that we did right after the Ohio City meeting. So you could see, we've got this sort of blue siding. And I apologize, this is a mirror image on my phone if you could see it. But we have the cantilever element, and right there, that's the underside of the ceiling or reflected ceiling plan that shows the gray metal that's on the side of the house, sort of cladding that ceiling element in that porch and kind of creates the support visually for this fiber cement clad gable that sticks out. Another comment we were going back and forth with Ohio City was the portion of the front window in the front. Again, we kind of like the single window that's there, and made it larger because our initial window was smaller, so we made it taller and a little bit more dramatic, and we aligned large window with the windows that are on the side. And we feel that this has a better weight to it in terms of the solid wall to glass proportion.
Thing right now for Longfellow, but I'm not up. So yeah.
Now, the garage, which you saw a little earlier ago, is just kind of like a replica, like a mini version of the house. It has it's a 2-car garage with a cute little apartment above. So there's a little bit of living space back there. But it's tucked in way behind the house.
I can talk now.
It's not visible from the street. And I wish if we could get the site plan up, you would see it.
Excuse me, real quick. If you're not speaking to the committee, the commission, please mute your microphone. We hear someone with a phone conversation in the background. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
So I've emailed all those attachments. If We'll see if they're able to pull these up here. This should help out.
I just received them. If you just give me a second, I'll try to bring all these up.
Just open up the project. Ship up. Yeah, I think they would.
I take it you're mostly interested in the site plan?
Yeah, site plans, there should be a colored,
Colored elevation as well.
at least to give you the color patterns and so that,
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, so those are the colors. Yeah, it's charcoal gray metal siding. We don't have visual or virtual samples with us. We don't have the actual samples for this presentation. But you can see that where the vertical metal is, it's gray. The roof is a charcoal gray. The window frames are charcoal gray. And then the fiber cement siding is this blue color. Now keep in mind, this rendering is the previous version that we had last week when we showed it to Ohio City. So again, you can see the front windows lower, and we've raised it up. You can see that there's a missing window on the front facade of that gray metal sided element that sticks out of the side. That is now, in the new black and white drawings. Again, this rendering is followed behind a little by a week or so in terms of progress. This just gives you the general colorization of the project. Again, metal siding and fiber cement. Looking at it from the rear, we have exposed metal chimney flues sticking out of the back for again, another modern take. Fireplace. Here's that site plan we were talking about.
GDX stuff.
So Maple Court is at the top of, I know it's labeled Maple Avenue.
Sorry, could you mute Michael Sandbury, please? Because I can't hear what's going on with two conversations.
I gave Rachel some dorm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So here you see the site plan. Our house, our front porch aligns with the neighbor immediately to the west of us, which is lower on the street. You could see the front corner of their house aligns with the front gable of our porch. Our garage, our driveway comes in on the side of the house where that gray metal siding was that you saw in the perspective. And then our two-car garage is turned at a 90-degree angle and tucked in off to the side. So it's not visible from the street at all. Immediately to our east is a vacant lot, and I believe there's going to be a new house proposed there shortly. And then we just have a large backyard behind all this.
Mr. Cato, did you want me to bring any of the other, did you want to see more of the exterior?
Yeah, so again, that's probably the driveway side. Like if we're standing at the garage, you'd be looking at the house from this perspective. The back is a one-story sunroom, again, wrapped in that same charcoal gray vertical metal siding. So you can see that it's basically a blue clapboard house with two sort of gray rectangles attached to it. And you could also see the double chimney coming out of the back of that roof. That second floor is the master suite back there. The metal is also the same metal siding, or the same metal color is also on the roof of this house. It's just two materials. And what you're seeing here directly from the back is, sliding glass doors that are biparting, so that when they open up, it opens up to the backyard. And we also have them on the side view, which you just saw as well. One of the things we're going to be doing, and I will mention this because this drawing doesn't show it completely, we're going to be extending that dark gray metal box you see at the back portion of this house. That's the sunroom. We're going to be pulling that back wall out another 30 inches to make the space a little bit bigger and a little bit more functional for the family because there's a fireplace in there, and that's also going to be their TV room. And we are going to be inserting a vertical 30-inch wide, 8-foot tall piece of glass at the very right-hand corner of that gray blank wall that you see there. So the glass will mimic the glass panels that are on the back. We're just pulling it around that corner, and that's not seen here because we just made that change yesterday afternoon. We couldn't get you the updated drawings quick enough. So again, I want to say that these renderings you're seeing here, just to show you the color, you can see the windows are a little bit different than the black and white version we had up here a little bit ago. The windows have been more consistently aligned. If you pull up the black and white version, you'll see the black and white version that was up here is the more current version. You can see the windows are more consistent. See that right elevation at the bottom there? We don't have all those various size windows anymore. We made them all consistent. And what you're not seeing on this right elevation is that extra 30 inches of wall at the far right corner, almost where it says A1 half scale. We're going to be adding that extra 30-inch wide window there. And the garage colors match the house as well, so it's all consistent.
Any other drawings that you would like to look at, or any other visuals that we should see before we move on?
No, we don't have anything more than this.
Okay, perfect. Then we will move on to committee reports. Are there any committee members, design review committee members here that can give their report? If you are, please use the raise hand function so that the host can take you off mute.
Madam Chair, I believe Donna Gregonis Bailey is here from the Design Review Committee.
Thought I saw her. That's
Hi, good morning.
good morning.
Can you guys hear me? Good morning. This is Donna Gregonis Bailey with the Ohio City Incorporated. Nice to see you guys after the long break. Well, not break, but so this house it came to design review twice, and it was approved with the recommendation that they recessed the Cyclops window. I hate to say that, but they were calling it a Cyclops window on the second floor. But ultimately, they wanted to have it amended in some way, and it looks like it's not as square as it was when it was presented to the committee. So that looks. And there was also a lot of discussion about Victorianizing the home. So I know there was regarding cantilevering the porch, and let's see. There also was a lot of discussion regarding the chimney. There were some comments about maybe having it clad as one in the rear and to continue it above the roof line. But then there were also comments about leaving it as is. So that was kind of mixed review there. There were a lot of people in attendance from the community, which is important to note. There were probably about 7 neighbors on the call, and they were all in support of the project and the design. So I wanted to make sure to bring that up. Let's see, the garage in the first meeting was discussed, but in the second meeting it was not. So maybe that's important to note as well. It was recommended that they wanted to have the house match the materials of the garage potentially, but then there was also discussion that since the garage might not be as visible from the street, it wouldn't be as important. And then they also considered, or they were mentioning doing a standard gable roof. And then those are most of the comments that are worth noting, I believe. And then I know they were talking about a gable, referring to it as fortress-like, and they said some of the proportion of solid was a little bit too blank on the home, but ultimately they did approve the home, and they just wanted to adjust the proportion of the front porch and of the window and the cantilevered portion of the facade as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public to speak on behalf of the project? If so, please use the raised hand function to let the host know to unmute your microphone.
Madam Chair, we have no one with raised hand.
Excellent, thank you. Then we'll open the floor to the commission for conversations and for comment and to ask questions. Members, please unmute your phones or your lines at this time.
Madam Chair, this is Bob. And I wondered if presenters have any photos of the existing, so we can see how this design fits in amongst the existing homes.
Madam Chair, Mr. Director Collier has his hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Collier.
Yes, a couple of comments. One in reference to the dubiously dubbed Cyclops window. With respect to the neighborhood context, because that's one of the things that I didn't see in the presentation, is seeing sort of a visual of the street and what types of properties you had around it. And I get the fact that this is new construction, and quite frankly, I think you did a really good job with the design because I think just the way that the materials contrast, I think it's very rhythmic and organized, which I can really appreciate. But it would help to really have gotten a sense of what's on the street. But in reference to the single window, the appetite of the owner was to have a window in the front that provided natural light. What was the motivation, for that window? Why not do two windows? And I'm just curious about that.
Madam Chair, we have Mr. Bigar with his hand raised.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Bigar.
Thanks, and thanks for the comment. Yeah, we went back and forth on the, I wish, Donna, I love you. I wish you hadn't brought the word Cyclops window back up. It's just so not flattering. But we had looked at doing two windows, and we'd even had some renderings that had two windows up top. But, and I wish, and maybe Dave or anyone, if we could share some images. We have a number of examples that show sort of this modern minimalist design with this single window up top that we really liked the emotion of it. We liked the way it was clean, and given that it's just a single bedroom up there, like it seemed to line up with, I guess, the flow of the house from vertically going from bottom to top. If you look at the color renderings, you'll see that the original window we had was bigger, squarer, and candidly, the design review board process was a little hard for an owner. I've never done that before, and it's hard to hear people criticize your house. But when they got to the window and they eventually, like the constructed criticism that came out of that, and the renderings that are now drawn with the more vertical window that is sort of aligned with the seam of the other windows on the side, given that your primary elevation is going to be from the side that stares at the cube. It's a small one-way street, so staring straight on is going to be very difficult to do. It's not going to be a typical look at the house. So I love what came out of design review board. Candidly, even though it was difficult, I was very happy with the revised design. And we do have, Dave, can you send them the pictures of the street that I sent to you so that we can get those posted too? The thing about the street is that there's technically one other single family home on this street, which is I want to say it looks like an old garage that has been converted to a home, and it's set back like 30 feet. You probably would miss it every time you walk down the 150 yards that constitute Mabel Court. Right in front of the street is a series of old sort of brick townhomes. Not a lot of detail in them. They're pretty much just a straight brick building with little awnings over the entryways. And then to the, I guess it's the west side of the street is Michelle Cornell's house, but Michelle Cornell's house actually faces West 31st Place. So on that side of the street, all you see, she's got a little apartment that would line up, like the edge of the apartment will line up with where our setback will be so that they will be conformed, but her house doesn't face Mabel Court. So you're really looking at what's a corner lot garden area. And then on the east side of the house, which is owned by Mary Cornely, that is currently vacant. There's just a kids' playground there now. I don't think there's a current contemplation of building on it, but I think if Mary was ever to sell her place, she's mentioned that she would try to sell that as an individual buildable lot. So whatever other single family home will be eventually built on West 31st Place, it would be right next to this one, but it's not built yet. So there isn't really anything to line these up against.
Okay, that's fair. Just with respect to the window, if I may, Madam Chair, the thing that makes it okay, for me is that the addition to the side of the house with the other small square window, it gives the house some weight other than looking like a very narrow sort of structure. I think that helps with respect to being able to maintain that singular window in the front. So that's my take on it.
And Freddie, that window came from Design Review Board as well. That was based, they thought it was a little too, I don't know the word, brutalist or whatever, to not have any windows on that side bump out. So that was another piece of constructive feedback we heard and accepted from Design Review Board.
That's great. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission?
Madam Chair, this is Stephen Harrison. I'd like to have them address, please, the overhang and why that was necessary.
Yeah, I mean, necessary is probably not the right word when talking about like sort of the design aesthetic we chose for our house. I live maybe 100 yards away currently in a 2-story single gabled roof home that was built in 1886 that, but for the cantilever, would look very similar to the house we're building. It also has a protrusion on one side that is not, but that is not metal. It's just a clap or a wood-sided little protrusion. So the idea was we wanted to stick with what we were doing, with what the neighborhood has, with the house we're currently in, but we wanted to add some touches of modern to it. And we did that in 3 places. I mean, primarily in the back. I mean, that part we thought we had more flexibility with because the back of the lot is completely enclosed. It is really a private space that you can't see it from any street sides. And so that was and given how skinny the entryway to the lot is, you won't be able to probably see it from the street at all. So we took a little more liberties on the back. And then the metal bump out was, I think, that was our second piece of, we wanted to add a little more space to the house, but also keep with that modern flow. And then the cantilever was probably our biggest risk, but we thought, if we can keep with the actual same framing that we have on a lot of these single gable roof houses, but add a touch of modern to the front without completely bastardizing the traditional look of the neighborhood, we wanted to do that. So we looked at a lot of different examples of this. I mean, you see it a lot in sort of Norwegian and Dutch countries that they've done this on farmhouses and barns and other places. And it does add just this very, I think Mike's word was thrusting emotion of, you feel something when you see it. And that was what we were going for. And it also allowed us to, we were really intent on having a front porch. We think that's important for the neighborhood. And we think that's important for these streets. So we wanted to have a modern front porch. And one of the easiest ways to do that while giving us the modern front of the house was to cantilever it. And based on design review board, we did go through, I think, 100 different versions of what else we could do. We added columns. I think the shelf that Mike designed and put under it really helps to alleviate some of the drastic nature of the cantilever. I think it mutes it a little bit, which is, I think, a nice compromise for maintaining the traditional look with, still providing us some of that modern, some of that modern aesthetic we were looking for.
Madam Chair, Adrian Bailey has her hand raised.
Yes, Ms. Bailey.
Hello, everyone. I have a question about the finished foundation. I noticed that the portion, the finished foundation is like the same height. I want to know what the height is. But are you trying to CMU exposures that while you have lines going around the building? Can you describe the material and what you're trying, your intent?
I believe the foundation is going to be like a stucco arch.
Stucco? Okay.
It'll look like concrete. You won't see those lines. The way this computer system draws this stuff, it kind of hatches in concrete block. But it'll be smoothed over with cement stucco.
And what's the height?
The height is 12 inches out of the grade.
Okay. And then the metal is going to go right on top of it. That's the metal material you was indicating earlier.
Correct.
Okay. We don't need to go to the site plan, but I noticed you have fencing on there. What type of fencing you have and the color?
Yeah, we're going to do a 6-foot wood fencing. We were going to stain it probably a year after it gets installed. The exact stain color, I don't think has been picked, but it would be sort of a normal golden wood stain.
And
Adrian, that's just to replace, there's already a 6-foot wide fence or a 6-foot tall fence that goes all the way around the lot. It covers probably 13 properties that connect to it. And so they, are you all getting feedback? Sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback when I'm talking.
Let me turn my mute off so that might help.
So they, so this would just replace the existing fence, and a lot of that fence has fallen down or is just inconsistent. And our neighbors, we've talked to 80% of them, the ones that would definitely have their fence replaced, and they're all supportive of it, especially because in some cases it will help redraw their property lines because the fence is taken away. The existing fence is not giving them the land that they own.
Okay, so it's an existing fence. The next thing, you have a lot of metal. That's your material in the building. So I'm curious what type of door you have. Is it metal or wood? And what type of window you have? The material.
Yeah, the door selection we still need to make. I think our intent was to do a solid wood door. So that will be a different color than the rest of the house and the blue and the metal. The windows selection will also still be made. I mean, a lot of this we just weren't able to do because of the pandemic. We haven't been able to go in and meet with people in person. So we've got things lined up over the next few weeks to go do that.
And then lastly, back the question about the chimney. Can you explain why you have two? It's also metal. What type of materials the chimney and why you have two instead of one?
Yeah, and let me address the metal first. We were originally doing a few different materials on this house. The underhang of the first floor facing the street, or that first floor elevation was going to be stained wood. The metal on the bump out was going to be copper. The chimneys were going to be copper, and then you were going to have this corrugated metal. I mean, based on our conversations with design review board, which ultimately I agree with, it was like, look, let's simplify the materials, let your landscaping speak for itself a little bit here. and let's make it a little less busy. So what we settled on was just having one metal type, which is really this dark bronze corrugated metal that will cover the bump out, the standing seam metal roof, and then the two pipes in the back. We have to have two because we have two fireplaces that are actually two wood burning fireplaces, which are back to back. One enters the sunroom, one enters the living room. So we do need two flues exiting. The industrial design of the two pipes was somewhat intentional based on our region and our industry. It seemed like it was a nod to that. It wasn't necessarily the most like important thing in the world to us, but we generally liked it, and based on design review board, we had one committee member who was unsure but didn't ultimately really feel strongly about it, given that it really is just the back of the house and unseen, and it might look odd having a simple like a single framed, and I don't know if you can frame it in technically based on the amount of separation the two pipes would need to have if they're enclosed. I think it gets a lot more tricky from a build perspective.
All right, thanks for the explanation. Just my last question, and then I'll turn it over to someone else. Do you have lighting on the house? Don't see it in the elevation.
Yeah, that's another meeting we haven't yet had. I mean, we're engaging a landscape architect who I meet with on, I guess it's next Sunday, and she's going to help me sort of figure out where the lighting will be. But our intent is to do a significant amount of lighting, both on the house and also in the back lot. Because if you look at the site plan, you'll see that we have maintained a large portion of the undeveloped lot as being still undeveloped. And so that will be the garden in the back, the play area for our kids. So we will meet with her and start to draw out that plan, but we don't have that yet.
Madam Chair, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commission?
Madam Chair, Mr. Harrison has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Mr. Harrison.
Thank you. Do you intend to use the upper portion of the back extension as a deck, if in any way?
We talked about it and ultimately decided that those second floor decks, especially after master bedroom, are sort of underused, and we thought it would just clutter the back a little bit. So there will be a patio coming off of the bottom of the first floor, but we did not intend on decking out the back just because we thought we just didn't think we'd use it.
Okay, thank you.
This is Michelle Anderson. I have some questions.
Go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
The windows, are they operable? Do they open?
Yes, I hope so, but I'll let Mike and Dave respond to that.
Yeah, it's a mix. Most of them will open. There'll be a mix of some fixed windows and some operable windows. They'd be operating like a casement window, so they would be a crank out style. The ones you see in the sunroom on the back, those are sliding panels that slide open their doors. So that'll add some animation to see the windows open here and there randomly on the facade as the weather's warm. I think it'll add interest.
Probably more concerned about the front elevation. That's what we're going to see from the street. Around
the first floor windows would open. The upstairs window is too large to have it open because it's quite large. They don't make operable windows that large. That's gonna be a window, and it's recessed into the facade.
But the other window on the side in that same bedroom does, I believe, open, right, Mike? Yeah. So, and again, you would have to stand like directly against the brick building and look at one single angle to ever see this thing truly head on. Just the way the street works, you're going to see it from a angled side perspective, looking at what we're looking at right now is probably going to be the primary elevation you'll see.
So you're more likely to see the side of the building than the full front on view if you're traveling on Maple Court.
Yeah, can we flip a few slides, or I'll stop us and I'll show you exactly what I think will be the primary elevation.
Sure. You want me to just keep going and tell me to stop?
Yeah, that'd be great. So actually, right here's fine. Perspective view, going back, perspective view 5 is about as front on as you'll ever get. So, I mean, and let's see another one. I think you're probably going to be a little bit more angled though. Maybe go back. Is there another one back more? Yeah, so perspective view 1 is probably a little too angled, but that's going to be your primary elevation. It's somewhere between perspective view 1 and perspective view 5 that we looked at. Just the way the street turns and where the house is going to go in light of that.
Would the color rendered version be better for you? Do you want me to bring that back up?
We could, although, you know, it doesn't show the window I like now. Right, so that angle there. So you will see a lot of glass from
More
the primary elevation.
Go down Maple Court. I realize it's a one-way street, so you're probably going to see one side more than the other.
Right, the other side of the house is actually going to be blocked entirely by Michelle's house, and then the brick building that's owned by Jula Nagy. So you're not going to see the other side of the house. It's really just going to be these two sides that you can see from the street.
We recently had a petition from around the corner on Fulton, and the architect a plan with windows similar to these, and this body had them change that to a double hung window, which is more consistent with what's in the neighborhood.
Yeah, we thought about double hung. I mean, I have double hungs on my house from 1866, or 1886, but across the street, I mean, you've got some paneled windows, you've got some double hung, you've got some mix that aren't any of the two. A double hung window, personally, I just don't think matches the design we have going here. I was open to paneling, but my wife and the designer at Paint and Pain overruled me quickly. So I don't even want to. I can't concede that one because that'll be trouble for the marriage. So right now we are in a hopefully just a single paneled window, even though I do understand it's probably a little bit of a break from from the double hung that definitely does override the neighborhood. But again, on this street, there are no single families, so it's a little bit of a different evaluation, I hope.
Well, the neighborhood still doesn't really have these single pane windows. I think we had a commissioner once call them Orphan Annie windows. They're just not consistent with the neighborhood.
I think you'll see them more though. I mean, I walked around the neighborhood the other day just to see if I could just to find them, and they are around. I mean, they're not as universally installed in every house because they're. I mean, I don't know if they're a little more expensive, but they certainly are a little bit more modern. But you do see them from time to time on houses around the neighborhood. So this wouldn't be a complete breaking of the mold.
If I could say one thing as well, I think the single windows as presented kind of flow with the modernness of the house as well. One thing I had mentioned to Ohio City was Maple Court is like this little surprise street. And so it's like, you could have this little house. It's kind of fun back there. It doesn't have to totally match all the other architecture that's around in Ohio City. I think this kind of is a foil to all that. And there are a lot of buildings and modern townhouses that have, casement windows. I know I designed quite a few of them, like at Clinton and West 34th Street. Like all those townhouses are all casement windows. There aren't any double hungs on those. They were built like 15 years ago. And even the new ones at Vine Court that are going up right now, those are all like large sheets of glass. They're 4 stories high. You know, it's really modern. So I think, you know, having this little house here, you know, with casement windows is kind of a fun thing. We also did a house on Jay Avenue back in 1995. That's all casement windows. It's right between, you know, Victorian style homes, and it's just a fun little break from, you know, some of the context. I feel like these are appropriate windows for this house.
I personally like the design as you have it, because I think it's a nice interpretation of a new house using the language and the form of the traditional houses in this area. I personally don't mind the casement windows because, once again, I think the size and proportion blend well with the neighborhood, but does have that more modern language of the casement. So I appreciate your restraint and not trying to make this way too modern, and really, you know, try to fit into the neighborhood. Are there other questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
Madam Chair, we have 3 additional people that would like to speak. We have Mr. Strickland.
This is Bob Strickland. I'll just add my comment. I have my hand up, but I wasn't recognized.
I apologize. I couldn't see it.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would just add my comments, which were going to be very similar to yours, in that, you know, this is like a traditional form that's been updated to a modern design. And I think the casement windows are appropriate for this modern take on this traditional form.
Madam Chair, we also have Mr. Collier with his hand raised and Mr. Harrison. I would like to point out to everybody that if your hand is raised, I will get to you when the break in the conversation. I've also been chatting, but people are not either do not have the chat window open or not responding, but I will try to respond to you when I see your hand. Just keep in mind that there are multiple people that may have their hands raised at the same time, and we can only take you one at a time. So patience we really request some patience here. Thank you. So we have, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Rulins. Thank you, Mr. Rulins, for that commentary. That's very appropriate. And I want to say, just speaking to the House, that I'm in 100% agreement with Ms. Trott and Mr. Strickland. I think that you nailed it as far as your commentary, Michael, with respect to this being somewhat, for lack of a better term, more of a nondescript street. You know, Ohio City, what makes it really great is that you have these surprises in the neighborhood. You know, whenever I have people who come to Ohio City and, you know, I take them around town, I go to Ohio City and the Tremont area for that reason, you know, because of the architectural surprises that it brings to you throughout the community. And I think this adds to that mix. I just want to say, I definitely concur with the chairwoman and Mr. Strickland, and would love to entertain a motion, but I think we have one more person to speak. So I'm just going to leave my comments there. And when you're ready for a motion, I'll be the first to provide one. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we do have Mr. Harrison that would like to speak. Thank you for being patient.
That's no problem. I would just like to address a little bit of what Mr. Cato said about this being a fun, nice surprise on the street, etc. I'm afraid this body is charged with considering the historic nature of the historic district that this property sits in. And while, you know, it may well be a fun, nice surprise on the street, that's not really what we're here to discuss and to figure out what the solution might be for this block, for this property and this design. So, you know, I feel like the design itself does take some consideration for the area, particularly with this gable roof. I do want to mention that so many new designs come to us that disregard the rhythm of gable roofs in Ohio City. So I applaud you for taking that into consideration. Also, the cladding of the building with siding, which is obviously, an appropriate form for cladding on a house in this neighborhood. I do feel, though, that the overhang is too dramatic, and I really encourage you to consider walking it back maybe a foot or so in order to make sure that you don't have any engineering problems, for one thing, at the juncture where the overhang leaves the front facade and projects. But I feel that, while it's not an appropriate form for certain eras, it actually harkens back to 17th century houses in New England. So, I mean, it is a traditional form, so I can't argue with that. And I do think that your additional little tray, if you will, underneath visually helps. I do feel that the single window in the front is a mistake architecturally, but again, it's your mistake to make in a way. So reluctantly, I will support this design.
Madam Chair, we have no one else with their hands raised at this point.
Excellent, thank you. If there's no further discussion, would someone like to put forward a motion?
We have Mr. Collier wishing to speak again, or I'm sorry, and also Adrian Bailey. Go ahead, Mr. Collier.
Yes, I would like to move to approve the project as presented.
Ms. Bailey, did you have a comment? You're muted, ma'am.
Sorry, I was going to make the motion, but I'll second it. And
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. No conditions on the motion. Approved as presented.
Can I add some item on the motion? That the presenter email the colors and the material details to staff. And you mentioned about the lighting, the site and stuff. You can work with staff on that. Email that too as part of the motion.
Excellent. Thank you. Good addition. Any further discussion? Mr. Pettit, could you please call roll and announce the results?
Ms. Anderson,
No.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia, Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Collier,
Yes.
Mr. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing your project constructed.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for
Thanks a lot.
being our
Appreciate
first case too.
It was different. I miss seeing you guys live.
So do we. Nice seeing you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our second applicant, our second case. We'd like to call, and I apologize, I just moved my agenda to call this correctly. I know we have a second applicant on the agenda. I apologize, I can't get my agenda up right now. The second applicant, which Don, can you remind us who the second applicant is on the agenda?
You're muted, Mr. Pettit.
Thank you. Our next item is the renovation and new construction at Henry W. Longfellow School at 650 East 140th Street.
Excellent. Thank you. I'd like to call the presenter forward. Could you please use the raised hand function so that your microphone can be unmuted?
Did it work?
Yes, it did.
Yay.
We have Mr. Green.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I just have one person with their hand raised.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Green. Please tell us about your project.
Sure.
This project's been a culmination of a couple of years now. It started a couple of years ago with a Cleveland Restoration Society RFQ to save the Longfellow School. And I apologize if I stutter a little bit. I'm getting feedback somehow.
Yes, sir. I muted did you call in as well as use your computer?
Yes, and I have the
Computer's
muted.
Actually, I have your phone muted and it's working fine. So continue.
Okay. Great. This was a Cleveland City School District building that was scheduled to be demolished. And Cleveland Restoration Society put out an RFQ, and we were successful with our developer partner, Vesta Corporation, in moving forward with the project. So we've taken this 1924 school building, which was designed by Walter McCormick. It's on a 4.5 acre lot, and we've moved forward with the design. We're looking to obtain low-income housing tax credits, state historic, and federal historic tax credits. Let's see, it's on the designated as a Cleveland landmark. It's also just received its national registration of historic places. We received that back in February. It's been approved by SHPO. I have not seen an approval from NPS yet, and OFA is still reviewing it as well. And if things all go well, we're looking to start construction sometime in October. So to give you some feedback on the project, as I mentioned, it's a 4.5 acre lot. There's 2 buildings proposed.
Mr. Green, if I can interrupt you, we do have a PowerPoint. If you just want to tell me when to advance, I can advance the slides for you.
Sure. In fact, why don't we move through some of the slides just so they could see some of the historic pictures of the way the condition was when we first received it. And I'll let you know when we could stop. Has everybody thumbed through these before the meeting, or is this first time?
I think it might be the first time we have not put this on the internet.
Okay. These are all just existing photos of the school building. So as he's going through these, there's 2 parts to the project. One is a restoration of the existing building, and the other is creating a new building next to it on the site and connecting them via an internal connector. Just keep going through these. These will give you some site plans and floor plans, which aren't so important. It'll be better once we get to the renderings at the end. The existing building you'll see on the right. Here you'll see the new building in gray on the left, and then there's a connector right here between the two. That is an interior connector, so you can be inside out of the elements that take you directly into the new building, and it dumps you off here at the main entrance under a canopy at the existing building. Okay, keep going. I probably gave you way too much stuff. I apologize. These are some here's floor plans for the school building. Some exterior elevations from the original drawing set. Just keep going. There's a ton of them. Here's the new building. And I'll describe what we're doing with the new building and the existing once we get through the floor plans and get to the pictures.
Did you want me to stop there or continue going to the?
No, just keep going. The renderings will give you a much better image of what we're doing.
Here we go.
Okay. So these are actually older renderings here, and these kind of show you where we started before we went to design review. So these are in there to kind of give you a feel for what it was before we went to design review, and as we went through 3 design review meetings, what it ended up changing and morphing into. But we'll stay here for a minute because this is a good representation. So you'll see the school on the right, and you'll see the new building on the left. The existing school building is going to be a historic restoration. The exterior of the building is all masonry. It's a masonry multi-width building with stone accents. And the scope of work for that building on the exterior is really to tuck point and restore the brick where it's failing, do as much of the stonework as we can to repair some of the stonework. It's spalling. You can see some of the rebar and reinforcing throughout some of the stone items. There's some major items of repair, which are the tower on the building. That building, if you look up at the top of that tower, has some pretty substantial cracks in it. So we'll have to restore that tower and bring that all back together and repair that structure. We're looking to restore the spires on the front of the building and kind of bring those back to their original look, which the louvers and all those are all disintegrated over time, and the cupolas have kind of patinaed, which we like the patina, so we'll probably keep that. Existing windows in the building are staying, so we're restoring the existing windows. And the interior is the same way. We're trying to keep as much of the flavor of the interior as possible. Public and common spaces are all keeping a lot of the existing finishes, plaster repair. Changes really happen inside the suites once you get into the units themselves. It's a 2-story building. First floor is mostly made up of units, and you'll see the kind of the wing that has the spire on it, which I can't point to, but it's the horizontal piece that kind of juts off of the H shape of the building. That has an auditorium that we're maintaining and bringing back to life. And on the second floor of that is a gymnasium, which we're turning into wellness and common space up there. The rest of the area is really occupied with tenant units. As you move over to the new building is a 3-story building to keep the height as low as possible to kind of help with the neighborhood context. That building originally started with a little bit of masonry and some vinyl type sidings to kind of give it a feel and connect to the neighborhood, but in running through SHPO, they didn't really care for that too much. So what we've done is we've changed the aesthetic of the building, and it's gone to a full masonry building. The colors of the masonry are close to what the existing building is, and going through design review, you'll see in the renderings to come that we've actually done a few modifications to the exterior, and very simple ones like adding soldier courses and row locks with accenting brick colors, things like that. Other amenities on the site. Up on Diane, you'll see there's a little loop drive there for paratransit turnaround and drop off, visitor drop off. That drops you off at the connector, which gives you a real quick entrance into the existing building, and also gives you an entrance into the connector, which gets you inside the new building as well. And on the opposite street, you'll see the parking lot, which we're accommodating upwards of 35 to 40 parking spaces at this time, and we're looking at some options of whether we can expand that or not. And to the far left, if you're familiar with the site, this is a very, very, very flat site. So our intention is to create a wellness trail out on that side of the site for both the neighborhood and the tenants to utilize. And a lot of dialogue happened in design review for that trail, and you'll see a final version of it later on in the presentation. And the goal of that trail is really to kind of keep it just meandering across the site. We felt that we could take some of the spoils from digging up the new building and the foundations, put it over there and kind of regrade a little bit to get a little undulation in the site, to create some visual interest to the topography. And let's see, what am I missing on the site? Everything up on East 40th, as far as the sidewalk patterns, planting beds, flagpole, existing trees that you'll see up there on East 40th, those are all staying and existing site amenities. What we're trying to do with the existing walks is pull them up, reset them so they're not a trip hazard, and use as many of them as we can. Okay, you can go ahead now and go through some of these slides, and we'll get to the pictures here. Okay, so it's good. Keep going. All right, keep going. That's still old. We'll probably have to go. Just keep going. That's an old connector. Keep going. I'll show you we'll get to the new stuff. Just keep going. So these are all just, these will give you some context, but they're pretty close, but they're not the final versions. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, this is a good place to stop here. This is a site plan that is, I think, a culmination of all the comments that we've received from the design review. You'll notice the walking trail on the left-hand side of the site has changed. It's a little simplified, a little larger, and that was all just from feedback and design. They had asked for certain ways to enter and exit the path, and how to have some landscaping areas with bench seating and landscaping as you go through and kind of meander around the trail. And also to be able to connect back to the public sidewalks. Another big issue or item that was with the design review was creating these little axial paths that align with the tower on the existing school. And you'll see there's like there's a square on the site that's kind of to the upper right-hand corner of the parking lot area. That is basically a connection point at the site between a northwest access and a north-south access and an east-west access that align with that spire. And so we've tried to create that into the hardscape patterns on the site to kind of pay some homage to that link. And has anything else changed on that site? I think that's the only other thing that changed on that. We can go to the next slide. This is a landscape plan, giving you a feel for where some of the landscaping beds are, trees being used. Trees that are existing, as you'll see on the right side of the existing school up on East 40th, are a little lighter green. Newer trees are darker, just so you know. Also gives you a flavor of the sidewalk paths and all that. Okay, keep going. Okay, so this is a more current rendering. One of the feedback we received from design review was that the building was a little bland, and we were very cautious of making changes after SHPO had already approved it, and we changed the design to meet the historical requirements of what they were asking for. So what we did is we created some roll-lock bands and some soldier course bands around the building, changed the brick color of them to a lighter brick, which kind of starts to play off the sandstone in the existing building. We pulled them out a little bit to create some shadow lines. We added a little prominence to the main entrance with the cap above the Longfellow letters. Now that isn't fully detailed in the rendering because we were rushing to get that in, but the idea is there that we were going to flare out the top with some type of FRP trim up there, and we still have to finish detailing that. Okay, we can go to the next one. I think this is just another view of that. Here we go. Here's the back side of the building, which is up on Diana. And you'll see that the roll-locks and the soldier course accents continue. Another piece of feedback we got was the vents that were on the building. We actually had painted tan at one time, and they stood out like little nodes on the building. So we changed those to match the brick color so they kind of disappear a little bit. And you'll also see the connector. We changed the brick color. At one time, it was a red brick to match the buildings themselves, but we felt to have that connector differentiated so it separated the two buildings while still physically bringing them together. to change the brick color to a tan, so it would help the two buildings stand out on their own right. Okay, keep going. It's just another view of the connector from the drop-off lane. On the right-hand side, you'll see the entrance point to the new building. So you go into the connector and you can go directly into the new building. And on the left, you'll see the canopy into the Longfellow building. That connector will dump you off underneath that canopy, and then you can enter into the building. And we intentionally did that. SHPO did not want us connecting new construction into the existing building. So we intentionally stopped that connector underneath the canopy so it didn't have to tie it into the building itself. But you're still protected under the canopy from weather, just not temperature. Okay. Here's a site plan with more of what we spoke of, with the kind of the more final trail. The future, the pavilion down there, just note that it's a future thing. That was kind of artistic license there. Same with picnic table locations. The staff I had render that one a little crazy with picnic tables. But you'll see the landscaping nodes at a little stopping points with some benches about halfway through the trail, so folks can just take a break and enjoy the day. And go ahead and keep going. Here's a close-up of one of the beds. Now, we currently do not have site lighting in there. That was, again, was artistic license. That is a trail that is not intended to be used at night, but we will be providing some form of site lighting there for some minimum foot candles. And here's our current look at the finishes of the building. So the red brick is selected to really match the existing school. The lighter colored brick there is meant to kind of play off the sandstone. And we're still working with the manufacturers of the windows and the paneling systems to get these colors to kind of jive with the color palette that we're looking to have. And seeing whether we haven't quite decided, because we have digital samples of these. We don't have any actual samples yet. So once we get the actual samples, we'll be able to determine whether they're clashing or not. And then we'll have to determine whether we need a custom color or anything to kind of make this work. I think that's everything we had in the presentation.
Correct. That is the last slide.
Sorry if that was long-winded.
Ms. Trott, you're muted.
Thank you. Is there a member from the design review committee that could present the committee report?
Madam Chair, I don't think Sharonda Watley is here today, but I can go through the report for you.
Excellent. Please go ahead.
As Mr. Green indicated, this has been through a long process with the local committee. On May 19th, they approved the project with some conditions to add low undulations to the topography of the green space, add uplighting, downlighting to the courtyard areas, add a small trail segment from the loop, reduce the width of the concrete pad / walk between the building and the main parking lot, uplighting of the chimney stack, and the motion passed 6-1. I believe a lot of those conditions were included in the presentation today.
Correct.
Madam Chair, we have Director Collier with his hand raised.
Yes, I want to make some comments about this project because there's a long history regarding this. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Kathleen Crowther. I would like to thank the architects and folks involved in this project. Many of you all know that it is not an easy task when you have a building with this type of historic character to try to do any additions to buildings like this and do it well. We feel that this design and the addition respects the existing building and also embraces the entire school site, which we believe is extremely important. This is nothing short of catalytic for this neighborhood. This is an area of town that is in desperate need of reinvestment and revitalization. And we believe that this project is extremely catalytic. This project has probably been in the works for a decade, to be quite honest with you. And to see it come to fruition is something that I think should be celebrated. With respect to the design and the site, just to touch on that just a little bit more, The consideration was not just for the physical structure itself, but really how this site becomes a place for the people who live on this campus. And I think that's really important, and we often leave that out of the equation, that when we're designing and developing spaces, that we're doing it for people, not just for the look. And I think that this project has come a long way, and I'm just really excited to see this move along. And would love to hear from the folks from the Restoration Society on their posture about this proposal. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have no one else with hand raised at this point.
Okay, we can open the floor for the commission to comment or ask questions. Commission members, feel free to turn off or unmute yourself or raise your hand.
Madam Chair, we have Ms. Crowther who would like to comment.
Go ahead, Ms. Crowther.
Hello, good morning. Mr. Collier gave me a segue to say something, so I will take it. We absolutely support this project, and we're grateful that Vesta Corporation responded to our RFQ and then our RFP. We had 3 developers who were anxious for this site, and we think we selected the best developer. We're pleased with the design of the new construction. The school itself will be rehabilitated using historic tax credits, so that's sort of an insurance policy for us with regard to the approach taken with the building. I would just add here that the building was almost lost. It was on the list for demolition in the school district's master plan, the segment that it applied to. And we were able to have a positive impact here because we had the support of the local councilman in doing an analysis of the condition of the building. And the building was designated as a local landmark. If the developer were here, I think he'd tell you the building is built rock solid. They're restoring everything, but it is absolutely rock solid. Something else just for the edification of the commission for you to know that the school district did hold off on demolition. They allowed us to undertake this process. And something really important happened here, which is the district requested from the Ohio the Ohio School Facilities Commission. I forget what the new name of that entity is, but that they participate financially in some of the hazardous removal process. Readying it up for developers to look at. So I think that's really important that the state has funding for hazardous material removal, and through the good offices of the local school district, they asked and the state said yes. And so I believe it's the first time that the state Ohio School Facilities Group approved of that expenditure of money for a building that would be eventually, we hoped, rehabilitated.
Excellent. Thank you for those comments. It's great to learn more about this building. Are there questions and comments from commission members? No.
Michelle Anderson, and I want to commend everybody involved in this project. This is really wonderful to see everybody come together and breathe new life into this magnificent building. And I really want to commend the architects for their restraint and their creativity in their incorporation of this new structure to the existing building. I really like the fact that they use similar color brick. I think the soldier courses are lovely. I really like seeing that it truly respects what is existing, and it enhances what's there. I think a little bit muted, understated, but repeating a lot of the themes of the magnificent Longfellow. So I really think this is a wonderful. It's very exciting for the neighborhood.
Madam Chair, we have Ms. Bailey would like to speak, and then Ms. Crowther again.
And Councilman Polensek is here too.
Yes, I agree with everyone. I really like the presentation of the project, how the new construction is blending in with the existing school and the landscape for the seniors to walk around. I like that as well. I have a question about the signage on the building. Could we go to that slide?
The Longfellow right there.
Yeah. It was another one. I was just wondering. It was another slide that made it look so big. So I was just, it could be because it was in an angle. Yeah, right there. So I'm just wondering the size of it. Is that maybe too large or it should be cut down a little? I'm just getting everyone's opinion on that. I like the color and how it blends in with everything. Just to have a comment on that.
If you're asking for the architect to give a comment back, again, this is an artistic rendering, artistic license a little bit. We have not finalized the signage package for this project. There's
Okay.
site signage directing people around, so this is going to change a little bit. I think the idea of having individual pinned letters denoting the name of the building is probably going to take some traction. But size and color and location and where it's located on the building is all there just for pretty picture.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
Madam Chair, we have the Councilman Polensek. Would you like to make some comments?
Yes, I would. First of all, I want to thank the Landmarks Commission for your comments, and I want to thank Vesta, Bruce, and above all, Cleveland Restoration Society. This was a dream of mine. When I inherited this portion of the community with the redistricting years ago, I was sad to acquire an abandoned school building. But it was this was a very passionate issue with me because my family lived on Darley, which runs next door to Longfellow. And former Councilman Jeff Johnson's family lived on the same street as well. So both of us, our roots are from Darley, and our families and many of the families in that neighborhood. And this is this might be the oldest racially integrated neighborhood in the city. And there's a portion of it's the oldest African-American neighborhood in the city. So this neighborhood has great history. And the school was tied to the community, and the community was tied to the manufacturing plants there and to the historic Collinwood Railroad Yard, where many of our families and acquaintances worked at. So when I inherited this site of this abandoned, magnificent building, I was determined to figure out what we could do with it versus tearing it down. So I blocked the demolition with landmarking the property. And then I went to the Cleveland Restoration Society. And I want to thank Kathleen Crowder, her team. She assembled a team. We worked on this for well over 3 years. It's just been a long process. It's been a long process. And when Vesta was chosen to be the developer, we were elated because of the team that they had assembled, primarily with Maroos and some others. And so this has been a long odyssey. I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel finally. We're hoping and praying that all the funding falls into place. And we've had some setbacks as a result of the COVID-19 epidemic. But nonetheless, we're moving forward, and this project is going to, in my opinion, reimagine East 140th, which was devastated by the closure of the Eaton Axle original corporate headquarters, and then the Fisher Body plant farther down to the south. So this is going to transform 140th. This will be the beacon of light on 140th. Once the school is project is completed and the towers, the stack is lit, hopefully the cupolas are lit as well. This will be a shining symbol. You're going to see it from I-90. You're going to see it when you go south or north on 140th. And there's a tremendous bent-up demand. This is a primarily African-American community today, but again, still racially mixed in some areas. And there's a bent-up demand here. People want to stay in their neighborhood there. They don't want to move out of there. So we're already getting the phone calls from the residents, figuring out when's this project going to be completed? When is it going to start? So we're hoping to keep the old timers in the neighborhood, and we're hoping to have their children or grandchildren or new residents to our community purchase their homes, so we can create a sense of neighborhood once again. And I am very impatient on this project. It's been a long time coming, and the stars are lining. I mean, dealing with the school board was not easy initially. Then Eric Gordon became very supportive of the project because he could see the potential. The city was able to acquire the building. We put the legislation through council, and then we were able to get the property over to Vesta. So it's been a long process. Again, I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this. I can't say enough. This project, and I want to say this to the Landmarks Commission, this to me is a blueprint of what we could do with other school buildings or other historic properties in the city. I think people will point back at this project saying that, look what you can do if you get all the players on the same page working together. Too many historic school buildings have come down already in our city, far too many. And I'm hoping the Board of Education will be looking to this project as well, saying, hey, this is what we can do with other historic buildings who are no longer deemed suitable for an educational complex, that we can put them back into productive use. So that's all I have to say. I want to thank everyone who's been involved, and I'm looking forward to getting this project going.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have Mr. Harrison and Mr. Strickland with their hands raised.
Go ahead, Mr. Harrison.
Thank you very much. Of course, I'd like to echo what everyone has said. This is a wonderful project, and I'm sure it will be a model for others to come in the future. A few details, Ms. Bailey, I would like to respond to your question about the sign there, Longfellow. I wonder if, taken in the context of the whole wide project, if that's not probably a good size, even though it looks really big right here on our screen. So I think our talking about it probably will spur the architects to revisit this issue, but it doesn't bother me at the moment. Now, if we could on this slide, I'd like the architects to address all these cornices. So up on the building on the left there, how does that, is there one cornice on the facade and then it comes to a different one on the back side? And then I'm not sure I understand really where the aesthetic for this projecting cornice over the Longfellow sign came from. So if you could address that again. Thank you.
Well, sure, absolutely. Let's start with the entrance for Longfellow. At prior design review, we had a metal coping, just like you see on the lower pieces above the entrance point. And we really felt if we were going to embellish the building, because the comments were that it was plain, was to do something over the main entrance point. And it was more of a response to say that we heard the comment that we need to dress up that entrance. And you can see in the rendering, it's basically, it's a little cartoony in how it looks, and we haven't finished detailing that. So at some point, we want to create emphasis at the entrance point up in that cornice line. We just haven't put in the study and the thought at this point. So we do have to trim that out and figure out how to do that so it doesn't look like what you see there. And then in your second comment was the back corner where you see the parapet kind of stop at a higher point and then come down. I think that's the point you're referring to.
Correct.
Okay. So what that is we have a sloped roof above, and it dumps over to this side, which is the lower side, into a gutter system and down the downspouts. And that parapet height, the higher point, continues around the building to the high point of the roof on the back side of the building, and wraps around all the other sides of the building until it gets back to the parking lot faces of the building where the gutters are at and the downspouts. So that's why you see the difference right there. That's what's happening at that corner.
It's still a very awkward transition. I mean, I wonder if, could you not continue the line of that parapet around the backside?
It's higher because of the high point in the slope at the high point of the roof, because we're sloping down to this face, so that it keeps. I think if you go to one of the other renderings on the back side of the building, 2 slides I think in advance of this, you could kind of other way. There we go. You see it lining up with the storefront and panel material. Let us check that, because we might be able to drop that down, because that's a shorter distance there. We might be able to drop that down so that's less brutal on that transition.
Well, these were just some picky thoughts about a really quite a nice design. So congratulations. I will support this, of course.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Strickland.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. My question is in regard to layout of the site and what might be planned for site fencing, and if the community will have an opportunity to utilize any portion of this site, especially the wandering paths, or whether that will be restricted to the residents. Thank you.
It is not restricted to the residents. We are not fencing around the wellness trail over to the west of the property, so that will be open for the community to use as well. So there's nothing fenced in there.
I think this is going to be a tremendous community asset in that regard, and I add my congratulations on a wonderful design.
Thank you.
Any other commission members that would like to make comments or ask questions?
This is Adrian, I'll just raise my hand. Speaking on the comment that just was made, so this is going to be open to the community. So that means the access to the school's second floor for the gym and other activity, is that also going to be open to the public too?
Boy, honestly, that's not a discussion that we've had. I was more speaking to the exterior amenities on the wellness side, wellness trail side, not necessarily the interior amenities. And we really haven't had a conversation to talk about that. So that's an excellent question that I'll carry on to Vesta.
Other questions or comments from the commission?
We have no one else with their hands raised?
I would just like to echo that I think this is a great project. It's many years in the works, and appreciate even the most recent changes to the cornice and so forth to make it a little bit blending and giving a little bit more detail to work with the building. I would also just echo, I think, what Mr. Strickland asked, or I think it was Mr. Harrison, sorry, about the entry, the main entry, the crown or cornice. You may want to study that more. So it looks a little foreign to the project and the building. It's the only element like that I've seen on this campus, but it's nothing that I would hold up the project on. I would just encourage you to study that.
Absolutely.
And the parapet, as Mr. Harrison said, you know, the rendering on the other side showing the lowered parapet with the exposed gutter, you know, could you do that through scuppers versus, you know, a fully exposed gutter system? I think that would really, you know, just add to the elegance of this building.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission, or would somebody like to put forward a motion?
We have Ms. Bailey with her hand raised and Mr. Harrison. I'm not sure if that was from earlier.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve as presented. My understanding that the signage is also included in the lighting is going to come back later.
And I would like to second.
Oh, sorry.
So we have a motion, we have a second. I heard the conditions of approval would be that lighting and signage would return.
And the signage, I heard that the signage was going to come back later.
Right, the signage. And then I would also, not a condition, but a recommendation to study the crowd at the main one-story entry piece. So we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Pettit, please take a roll call and announce the results.
Please unmute your microphones. Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Collier?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik?
Yes.
Ms. Trott?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Excellent. Wonderful
Thank you.
project. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to our concept plan, plan approvals or reviews, I should say. Please mute your mic if you're not speaking. We'd like to welcome the project at Lincoln Park Flats, West 14th Street at Kennelsworth Avenue. Could the representatives please raise your hand so the host can unmute you, and then please tell us about your project.
Madam Chair, it looks like we have David with his hand raised.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, David Mason.
Welcome, David. Tell us about your project.
Thank you. So I don't know if you recall or not, but we were before you folks in the fall with a proposal to put a multifamily project on the corner of West 14th and Kenilworth. First slide just shows an overview of Lincoln Park, and we are the property that is just west of the northwest corner of the park. We can go to the next slide. Again, just looking back at the corner, we can see on the lower right-hand side the existing Byzantine church, and the maybe in the background of the green is the existing residence that acted as a rectory for the church in years past. Our initial proposal back in the fall was to demolish that existing residence and use the entire lot for our new project, and that was met with some resistance. So the development team and I kind of circled the wagons and tried to come up with a project that would enable us to retain that existing home and also create a viable project for the team, one that they could actually, you know, pencil out and sell to a bank. So we spent a little time with we maybe could go to the next slide. We spent a little time talking, this is just a quick shot of the parcel, which would be the parking lot parcel itself. So we've kind of resubmitted adjusted plot lines to, the condition of the site was a little messy. Some of the church was on the residential lot and vice versa. So we've kind of cleaned up the lot lines, and then pulled off the rectory building from the parking lot and the church. So we've got kind of a clean shape to begin working with. Maybe one more slide then. So what we did was work with planning and zoning, and this is in the urban form overlay. So there were some requirements to occupy the corner of the site, minimal setbacks. So, but then also in work, that's kind of from a zoning perspective. But then also in working with planning, we wanted to kind of ease that transition as we met the residential buildings that are further set back moving south along West 14th. And the solution that we came up with was to kind of occupy the corner itself, and then pull back and create kind of a courtyard as we move south on the site, which would again kind of ease the transition of our building into the kind of the homes as we move south along 14th. We're using then that courtyard as our primary entrance. So you'll see when we get to the elevations, we've set up some low masonry walls and some kind of iron gate work to continue the definition that we were required to keep in satisfying the urban form overlay. But we think we've got a nice way to kind of access the building. To the west, then, between our building and the church is where we would have space for dumpster that is enclosed. I think that's good. We could move on. So the building is a good bit different than what we proposed last time. We again looked around, spent some time looking at and talking about the neighborhood. There's diverse range of architectural styles that are happening, but we looked at predominantly the multifamily buildings, and we tried to get to a brick building, but again give it a little bit of break. So we've kind of got a 2/3, 1/3 with a higher brick base and then a fiber cement cap. One of the things that we kind of worked through in the design process was there was a comment early on that it was feeling a little balcony heavy, and one of the things that we did to try to address that was to kind of separate the masonry a little bit and pull that darker cement, that fiber cement siding material into the masonry and kind of hold those balconies so that visually they connected to the building a little bit more strongly than they did when they were just attached to masonry. So you can see we've got this is from the this view is from the corner of West 14th and Kenilworth looking back at. You can see the church off to the right. We could maybe go to the next one. And then this is a shot then from what would be from the park, looking at the building, and you can see how we've kind of pushed the form back as we hit our courtyard. We continue the masonry along the base a little, but we've kind of pushed that back to kind of start to move back kind of towards the line on the street where the residences begin. We go to the next one. So this is the ground floor plan. Kenilworth is to the north. 3 units addressing the park, 3 addressing Kenilworth. We've got 2 that would face the existing church, and then again one to the south that also faces the park, with our entrance kind of tucked in there between the two pieces of building. We've got generous space for bicycles on each floor of the building. Next slide would just be the upper levels of the building. Got the line drawn elevations. As we get to the church, as we get to the elevation, the west elevation facing the church and then the south elevation facing the house, we are pulling the masonry down to approximately 1.5 stories, a little better than 1.5 stories. And then just bringing the hardy down to meet it, the fiber cement panel down to meet it. Keep going. Just some examples of materials. We're using a softer masonry, red orange, but something that's kind of soft in its feel. There's a photo then of the hardy panel system. They have another comment that was raised, and it was a good one, is that we could get a little more visual interest if there were some battening that happened on that upper on the upper portion of the building where we're using this panel, and we definitely agreed. What we would do is continue with the kind of the flatter hardy panel system, and then integrate battens where they make the most sense, so that we don't have to respond to a sheet good, a 4x8 spacing. So we'll batten the corners, and then we'll batten center lines of door or window openings, and find transom lines. And so it'll be a little bit larger scale battening than if we were just using a sheet good. So it'll be a combination of both the flatter hardy panel system and then some battening to give that some interest and articulation on the upper portion of the building. Our balconies will be the pre-manufactured aluminum. We'll have them custom painted to match the cement. Probably keep going. There may not be. Oh, we've got just some colored elevations then. Primary entrance again off of 14th, secondary entrance off of Kenilworth. This will be the next slide. Landscape plan. What we did along West 14th on the upper portion of the building, or the portion furthest north where you see the landscaping, is we're proposing a low wall masonry planter that would extend basically from the building out to the sidewalk, and then kind of transition into our masonry walls that surround the courtyard as we move further south. We just got a variety of plantings that we're proposing. Keep going. We go to the next. Okay, sorry. And then lighting plan again. Just
last slide.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Little lighting at the back of the building where we could have egress out of the stairwell. Lighting at the secondary entrance along Kenilworth, but again, just low lighting pushing onto the ground plane. Nothing's that's going to be spreading around the community. Lighting of the courtyard and the main entrance into the facility, or into the building.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make an announcement that Director Collier will be leaving the meeting in a few minutes, but we will still have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you.
And it looks like Mr. Collier would like to speak.
Go ahead, Mr. Collier.
If I can just speak to this project before exiting the meeting, I just want to say that we have Matt Moss from the City Planning Office here, who's going to speak on behalf of the neighborhood and the local committee. But we've been working real hard to get this project right. Matt is going to explain to you where we are from a departmental perspective. We do believe this is a great location, an ideal location for this type of development. Those individuals who will be living in these units will have great access to downtown, access to a great neighborhood, and a huge amenity in Lincoln Park. With respect to the design, it's a design that we think has a lot of pluses. The combination of brick and other material and the balconies respect the park and the view sheds that are afforded to these residents. And, we think this is overall a good project. There are some nuances that Mr. Moss will speak to you about, but just wanted to provide that commentary on behalf of the City Planning Office. And just want to say thank you to everyone on this call for your ability to adapt and your professionalism. And we just appreciate you at the City of Cleveland. So thank you all.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Collier.
Madam Chair, we have Mr. Pettit with his hand raised, and I would imagine Mr. Moss at some point would like to make a comment.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
Is Michelle Davis here to speak to the Design Review Committee recommendation?
Michelle has her hand raised. Or is that a different
you.
Michelle? Oh, wrong Michelle. We do have a Michelle with her hand raised, but there's no last name.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Michelle Davis. I'm the Assistant Director at Tremont West Development Corporation. And part of my role is to coordinate the Tremont Local Historic District Committee. As you all know, we don't have a lot of projects in our historic district. And it's been probably over a decade since we've seen a new construction project in our committee. We did meet, and the committee approved the project as designed, but they have grave concern about the density and 0 parking spaces. And I'll leave it at that. I know my committee did have some chatter after the committee meeting. We weren't sure what we were allowed to speak to, since we haven't seen a project like this before. Since I've been coordinating the committee, and it's probably been about 10 years. And so I'll leave it at the motion that as the conceptual motion that they came to the conclusion at. I'd also like to say that the developers are planning to visit a block club next Monday. This is in the Lincoln Park Auburn block club area. And since the developers do not have their letter of nonconformance, they're not going to take an official vote until they know exactly what it is that they're voting on with this project.
Madam Chair, we have Ms. Crowther has her hand raised, and Mr. Pettit has his hand raised.
Let's move on to Mr. Pettit.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the process since the last time we reviewed this. And I will defer to Matt Moss about some of the planning issues that we discussed here. I think the fact that we're not losing the rectory is a big win here. We're not going to have a demolition of a significant house on West 14th Street. We did meet several times with the applicant and the architect. We talked about setbacks. We talked about stepping the building back to defer to the housing. I thought that the additional height could be supported based on the scale of the church. I think it's a much improved design. It's only here for concept plan today. I want to make sure that that the developer gets very clear direction this time. But the fact that the fact that there's no parking here is partly an issue with the local committee, but it also allowed the retention of the house. So I'll defer to Matt Moss to speak to some of the planning issues here.
Madam Chair, we still have Ms. Crowther with her hand raised.
Ms. Crowther, why don't you go next, and Mr. Moss, could you speak after Ms. Crowther?
Okay, thank you. I'm speaking from the viewpoint of the Cleveland Restoration Society New Design in the Historic District, and also as a property owner on Kenilworth, and I lived in our building, a storefront building on Kenilworth for a number of years. I am gravely concerned about this building. I think it is way too large for the site. It does not respect the setback of the street. I think it obscures the line of houses that go to the south. It seems to obscure the church itself. I think it is just simply, it is a sort of a bold statement in a historic district where in a National Register historic district, we want buildings to be sympathetic to the rhythm and the forms of the district. I think this is doing everything it can to squeeze too many units onto the site. So we would oppose this design for many reasons.
Thank you. Mr. Moss, would you like to update us on the feedback from design review? I'm sorry, from planning.
Happy to, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Moss. I'm the neighborhood planner with the City Planning Commission. To reiterate some of the history of this process that Don Pettit touched upon, we met with the developer several months ago prior to all of us working from home with Councilman McCormick, the development team, and myself and Kyle Reese from City Planning, as well as Don from Landmarks. And I think this is the concerns that have already been stated are definitely worth considering. But I think notwithstanding those concerns, this is a project that, in my opinion, as the planner for the area, has really improved by eliminating the off-street parking requirements. There's always concern about how vehicles impact the historic district and really any district where new development comes in. I think in this area, there is evidence to support the observation that requiring strict off-street parking numbers has required the demolition of buildings in this historic district. Across the street, there's an apartment building in the Ukrainian archives further along Kenilworth, where buildings have been torn down in order to provide off-street parking lots. And I think that really has a detriment to the visual impact, and really not so much that, but also by forcing developers to tear down buildings to provide off-street parking. From a planning perspective, it makes the district and neighborhoods less walkable because it pushes uses further away and limits the density in the area for services that we deem as essential, not just for residents of market rate housing, but residents who have fewer options in terms of how they move about a city. From our perspective, really the least efficient and the most carbon intensive way to get around a city, especially a city like Cleveland, is via personal automobile. Tremont is a neighborhood with one remaining bus line. It's the 81 bus and it runs every 40 minutes, which is very difficult for people who rely on transit or who want to live in a neighborhood with transit access. And in order to support RTA and support other ways of moving about a city that are safer, more efficient, and less carbon intensive, we need to really seriously consider replacing surface parking lots in these neighborhoods with space for people instead of storage for personal vehicles. And so I think that to that end, this project really excels in meeting those goals in terms of housing people in these neighborhoods instead of cars. And I think that that's something the city needs to do, and it's been our goal, and it's been a goal stated in our master plan since it was adopted. In terms of setback, the zoning in this area was recently changed to map the urban form overlay. This is a tool that's relatively new that really puts our planning goals as a city into the zoning code rather than requiring developers to constantly seek exceptions and variances from the code in order to meet our goals. It's not a perfect tool. It creates some challenges in terms of, in this case, requiring a maximum setback instead of a minimum setback. So I understand the concerns about what this does visually to the street. I think that here, though, the tool is creating more good than harm in terms of allowing a development that is viable from the developer's perspective, while again, not requiring any more land to be dedicated to off-street car storage. The street Kenilworth that runs west from this site, from the corner of 14th to Scranton,
is a street that, again, much of the existing stock was eliminated when the freeway went in. It's a street that has ample on-street parking, and in my personal and I would say professional opinion, would be safer if it was more heavily utilized with on-street parking, because this helps narrow the street, which forces cars to drive more slowly. I use that street a lot to get around the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood I have the privilege of both living in and working in. And I think that these developments and bringing more people to these neighborhoods is a way to help, again, support alternative modes of transportation, modes that are alternative to a personal vehicle, while also making streets safer by creating more activity on those streets, whether it's by walking, biking, or by parking a car. So I'd be happy to explain any more of those items in detail or answer any questions from the commission.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have Khalid Hawthorne from Tremont West would like to speak. And we also have Mr. Harrison.
Go ahead, Mr. Hawthorne. Hawthorne, you might be on mute.
Mr. Harrison can go first. He had his hand raised before I did.
I'm just waiting to make comments about the design, so please go ahead first. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was involved with this project earlier. I can say the same for later on with the discussions between Landmarks, city planning, and the developer. We had a lot of conversations around parking. The original proposal for this site was 20 units on just the parking lot before they said they needed to demolish the rectory to get additional units to make the project work. So that ended up at 26 to 28 units. What we see here is 49 units. They sold off the rectory, so they benefited economically from that, and subtracted parking, which reduced the cost. So that's a lot going on. And feedback that we've received from people in the community as far as the level of on-street parking is unacceptable at this point. We have talked around balance of on-site versus off-site parking, and even in this previous scenario, there would have been a balance between that because they would have been flexing on street as far as the extra parking that they would need for additional people having spouses or people visiting and things of that nature. We also, as part of the previous discussions around the church and potential uses for that, we talked about off-site parking, utilizing more of a district parking scenario with all the available parking at Grace Hospital. This is tough for the community to support and to get behind. They like the design, yes. I am fine with it holding the corner because the what I could consider the opposite corner of the church at West 14th and Starkweather, it holds the corner as well, and probably between 8 to 10 feet setback. And also, as far as height is concerned, it mirrors the building across the street, which is Tremont Lofts. But we do need to consider the on-site parking. You can do that without on-site parking, maybe reducing the total number of units. There's some other things that I would like to discuss with the developer as far as the Lincoln Park facing units. But like I said, definitely worth further discussion and figuring out these parking issues and also having designated parking period within the district.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
We also have, Madam Chair, we also have Mr. Strickland and Mr. Moss with their hands raised.
Go ahead, Mr. Harrison.
All right, thank you. Sorry. I want to commend the architect for a much better design than the last one, which to me, fits the space a whole lot better. I don't mind the, I'm glad I believe it's a bit taller. I think it's really nicely scaled in terms of its height with the building adjacent across the corner there. I do feel like you need to bring that brick course up, however, a half story. I think that the hardy cornice, if you will, is not in scale with the brick at the moment. It just needs to rise on the facade level, in my view, to at least the level of the base of the top course of balconies, and then stop about there. And I would also ask you to look at filling in or putting some under cap to those balconies, so that unlike there's a building on Detroit where you can see up underneath the balconies and they're all just boards and it just looks terrible. So being able to visually see up under those is not attractive, and I think it mars the otherwise quite sophisticated nature of your design, which in my view echoes the 19th century character of the large building, again, adjacent across the corner. Regarding the parking, well, I think that's an issue to be looked at and studied. I completely agree with Matthew Moss on this, that we lose sight of the forest for the trees if we continue to require lots of parking, off-street parking, just so people can move their car off the street. Many urban centers, you have no access. You have to off-street parking, and people adapt and learn to live, and it makes the city a more walkable area. And I feel like this is absolutely the moment to make that kind of transition here. Now, whether or not, I don't think it's necessarily black and white, so whether or not some compromise can be made to find some more parking, fine, but I really feel that Kenilworth is a street that is completely underutilized at the moment. No one parks there at all now, and it's a street that would benefit from that kind of parking accessibility. So I really, in sum, I think you're really you've preserved the rectory, you've preserved the church, you provided a very strong, nice element for the corner that no longer looks like a Radisson hotel. So I really feel like this is a much better design, and I really do think that it would improve if you raised that brick course just a bit more on the up to the top floor.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to reinforce and echo, I think, for the most part, Mr. Harrison's comments. This is a concept design. We're not voting on it today, but to provide some direction to the developer, I'm strongly in favor of this design solution. I think the added density in the neighborhood is a wonderful thing to see along a major corridor, West 14th being the most primary corridor through the neighborhood. And there's so many more transportation solutions, opportunities now than there had been previously. And so I don't think in an urban setting that everyone needs to own a personal vehicle and worry about where to park it on the property where they live. Right across the street on Kenilworth is the St. Augustine Church. With that, I would say, massive surface parking lot, virtually never utilized. There might be opportunities for the developer to work with the church to develop some parking opportunities for the residents without requiring additional on-street parking for this development project. So I'd strongly favor this project. And I'm going to have to leave the meeting, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Moss?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify too, to some points made by Mr. Hawthorne about the developer either selling off some of the land. I would like that, if possible, to be confirmed. It's, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any transfer. They've replatted some of the parcels, but I believe they're still owned by the development entity. But regardless of that issue, I do want to again emphasize, and I appreciate Mr. Harrison and Mr. Harrison's comments about what it is, what I think our responsibility is as the planning department and as reviewers of these projects, that I don't think we should really emphasize I think our goals are clearly stated in terms of what we want development to achieve. And I think if the developer is able to, and I encourage them as well, to seek arrangements where they can provide services and opportunities for their tenants to park. But I think making it a requirement of our review and approval as the municipal corporation is problematic for the reasons stated. And I just want to really underline that it's not, that our goal is to support the modes of services that create more options for people who have fewer. And it may be possible that none of these residents, if they live here and this building gets built, take the bus. But if some of them do and will, that's a boon to not just the city, but to people who have no other option or need to use that bus as the primary option. So I just wanted to emphasize that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the commission?
Yes, this Adrian. The first thing, I would like to see like the comparison of height of the building with the church, and if possible, the building across the street, if possible. But I do like the design and the coordination of the color and material. One of my comments was, as Mr. Harrison mentioned, in raising the brick, the lessen the hardy board, because it makes it looks massive up at the top and solid, and so raising it up. But my comment is on the other elevation, the one on the right, the left, it looks like most of it is, same thing. I raised everything all up at the same level. Because I couldn't tell on the other drawing whether it's just a lot of hardy board on this elevation. But yeah, do the same thing around the building. The question about the balcony, how far out the distance is the balcony from the face of the building? I'm also looking at if that can be lessened, maybe that might lessen the masses of the building. But could I get an answer on what's the depth of that balcony?
It's showing us 5 feet right now.
It's 5 feet? Okay. All right. Could you look at seeing if you can lessen that? That might help with making the building look more massive. But otherwise, I like the material. Can you tell us off the top of your head what the overall height compared to the church nearby? It looks like the church is a little taller.
The church is a little taller. We're right at 60 feet, which is what's permitted, but the church is a little taller.
Okay. All right. Those are my comments. And about the parking, I agree with everyone on that. But again, this is a neighborhood that, it's more walking, understand the parking, because I go down and it'd be hard for me to find parking, but I understand the history of the neighborhood. But I like the building.
Thank you. Ms. Fowler has her hand raised.
I didn't realize I had my hand raised, but I will say I'm very discouraged with the discussion from the commission because this building, in my view, does not fit the overall feel of the historic district. The lack of respect of the setback is a problem. It's way too large for the site. I at least appreciate Adrian Bailey's comment of how can this, let's see how it compares to the church right now in this view. You know, the loss of the sight line to the side of the church is evident. And comparing it with Pelton Arms, which is across the corner there, Pelton has, well, perhaps it's called Tremont Lofts now. Pelton Arms is the historic name of the building, I think. You know, has a majestic front lawn, and you know, it fits with the character of the area. Clearly, there are too many units on this site, packed onto this site. Why? Because it's a premier site facing Lincoln Park. Too many units on the site. I don't know how the zoning could be appropriate to historic district.
Thank you. I guess my feedback is, you know, initially, I'm still struggling with the height and the scale of the building. In looking at Google Earth and looking at some of the buildings that are around it, I won't say I'm comfortable, but I'm not as uncomfortable with the height. I do, though, I'm struggling with the setbacks personally. West 14th Street has a fairly consistent setback of large-scale 4 to 5 story buildings and the residents. And then I just lost across Kenilworth, correct? Kenilworth, yep. Also has a fairly consistent setback along that street also. So I think, to me, I don't mind the 5-story scale as much as initially I did, but the setbacks I'm truly struggling with because of how it is foreign, especially along 14th Street.
Could we see the site plan?
Is there feedback on the site plan? I don't know who actually asked to see that.
Your microphone is muted, Mr. Harrison.
Sorry, is the gray block at the bottom of this site plan the footprint of the rectory?
It is.
Okay. Well, I think, being that this is a corner building, I think that mitigates the setback in some respects. Corners always are, treated in somewhat different ways or can be treated in somewhat different ways. And I'm not, I would never be opposed to somehow figuring out how to bring the building back. But at the moment, I don't know. I feel it almost frames this row of houses, because at the other end there's a big church that comes almost to the sidewalk. So, I'm not sure that it's really such a terrible thing that it fills the corner as it does. I will say, full disclosure, I should have said this earlier. My house is at the opposite, the southwestern corner of Lincoln Park. So I speak not just as a commission member, but also as a homeowner here. And I really feel like at this corner, where there's just an empty parking lot to the north and the Pelton Arms to the other corner, this is an appropriate balance to the Pelton Arms, frankly. And I should hate this building, but I can't. you know.
Is there other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Bailey, do you have your hand up again?
Yes, Mr. Davis, what's the depth from the face where the landscape is? I'm just like the depth of that setback, the distance where the trees are.
Along Kenilworth or 14?
I can't tell which street this is.
Kenilworth's to the north, and then
Yeah,
14.
where the landscape is, the small trees at. What's the setback?
It's 4 feet to the property line, 5 feet to the sidewalk. So it's a 5-foot area.
Okay. Earlier when I heard while you was making the presentation, did you make a comment that you was trying to line the building close with the church setback? Are you using the steps that leads up to the building as you're lining up? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like you made a comment earlier in your presentation that you was trying to line up this building with the church setback.
We did not, no.
Oh,
But
okay.
we're lining.
All right. Okay.
Is there other questions or comments from the commission?
Yeah, this is Michelle Anderson. And I guess I'm going to be the contrarian again. I agree with Ms. Crowther's comments, and I'm concerned about the parking. I've been selling real estate in this city for over 30 years, and the buildings that fail often are the ones with little or no parking. As much as we have this idealized view that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to abandon their cars and take the bicycles, I think there's actually a little bit of arrogance in that. I think a lot of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are probably not inclined to take the bus or hop on a bicycle. 49 units with no parking is, I think it's going to be problematic based on the way people live. I think we like to see ourselves as a future New York or Chicago, but the overall plan of the city wasn't that to begin with, and I think it's one thing with this idealized form that we see. It's another thing to actually implement it. I don't see that happening.
Madam Chair, I believe we have another member that has to leave at 11 o'clock. Mr. Tarasek, I believe, is leaving.
Excellent, thank you.
He's left. Mr. Harrison has his hand raised.
Yeah, I'm not unsympathetic at all to the parking issue, and I think it's a very serious one. And I do think that if the developers could get a plan in place, perhaps a discussion with, I'm not sure, whomever owns the parking lot across Kenilworth, I think before you come to the Historic Commission for a final vote, that would be very helpful to know just how that is, instead of just saying, well, people will just have to park where they can find a space. I think everyone should take that concern very, very seriously. I certainly hear it from my colleagues, and I will just say that, finally, to talk about the setback, one final note that I wanted to make is that this design, if you're looking here at the site plan, there's this step back before it gets to the final pullback where the line of the houses are. If the building came all the way forward, it would be much worse. But having this little transition where it goes from the corner element to that secondary element that's pulled back, and then finally to the house, the rectory itself, I think that really does help soften that connection between this building and the houses that follow to the south. So I would like to point that out. But I really hear Ms. Anderson's comments and also Ms. Crowther's comments about parking and about setbacks, and I think those issues really must be addressed by the architect and the developers before you can expect a final endorsement by this body.
Madam Chair, we have a few people with hands raised. We have Michelle Davis. I'm not sure if that was from earlier. We also have Adrian Bailey again and Matthew Moss.
Ms. Davis. Please go ahead.
I didn't have my hand raised. It must have been from earlier.
It's still raised.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just, there you go. I'm sorry, who did you say next?
Mr. Moss, did you want to speak?
Mr. Moss.
Thank you. I want to again respond to Ms. Anderson's comments too. I want to make it clear that at the Planning Commission and at the staff level, we're definitely not saying that people who live in this building or live anywhere in the city can't have a car. I think we want to dial back. I think the mistakes we've been making really since the 50s in terms of obligating property owners and developers to provide space and storage for these cars on private property. I think that's been a mistake that pushes uses further away, consumes more land for cars instead of people, which is, I think, had severe environmental and financial implications for the city in the last 60 years or so. And we're trying to take steps to reverse that trend. I think it's incumbent upon the developer, if they feel like they can build and lease units and find a market for units like this that don't strictly provide off-street car storage for their customers, that's a risk that they're willing to take. And I think that's something as a city we should embrace more often, because I think it makes not only housing units less expensive to build, it allows more units to be built, which is good, and I think in these urban neighborhoods, and consumes less land, especially in landmarks districts where we're trying to preserve all these structures that remain. So I think I don't think it's a concern necessarily for the city if they're able to build this or attain financing. I think in terms of whether it gets built or not, we have to assume if they're presenting it to us that it will be built as presented, and make our judgments that way. And I understand fully exactly what the concerns and criticisms are that are said here, but I think encouraging this type of activity from developers does have benefits, and it's not 100% a benefit. There are always trade-offs involved, but I really want to encourage developers to consider these options rather than discouraging them. So with that, I'll finish.
Respond to that.
Go ahead. Phil?
I think it is a concern for the city. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. In my decades of selling real estate, the buildings that I see that fail either have no parking or inadequate parking. And as far as pollution goes, we're seeing more things like electric cars and vehicles that don't have the emission problems that they did years ago. And frankly, I talked to friends of mine who are delighted at the prospect of self-driving cars. They feel that they're going to be driving into their 90s, which their parents were unable to do. So I think this whole idea that everybody's going to chuck their car is, just short-sighted. Again, I think it's important to see that we plan for and build buildings that are going to be successful. And, designing something without any off-street parking is not a recipe for success.
This Adrian, my comment is also on the parking. Unless the neighborhood have places where people can just walk to this property. But my question to is it Mr. David? Have you looked at parking on the interior? First,
We have certainly, and part of our earlier schemes, especially when we were removing the rectory building, did have on-site parking. This was kind of part of the trade-off, and I will say the development team is also looking at alternate dedicated parking spaces as well in the neighborhood. So that will be, as you've requested, part of the formal presentation.
Knowing that, it sounds like we are to a point of repeating and reinforcing comments that have been made. I think since this is a concept plan, this is our opportunity to give you feedback on the design. The major things that I have heard related to design are that we would ask you to address are to address the setbacks stronger in your next presentation, and to consider how there's any adjustments that could be made to align with the setbacks of the area better, and to address the parking concerns that have been brought by the commission and the community, and addressing it through some type of parking plan, either if it's not on site, then somewhere that can be off site in the interim until we collectively get to that point of being more carless. Because I think that needs to be answered on many fronts. Do you feel, Mr. Mason, that you've received the feedback from the commission?
Absolutely, and I thank you all very much.
Wait, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
There was one other element of the design that at least three of us felt that the brick facade should be raised and the hardy reduced at least a half a story. So I would like to put that back on the table for Mr. Mason to consider.
Thank you. I've noted.
Absolutely.
And then I also made a comment on studying the balcony. The balcony is 5 foot, and that kind of look at that.
Yes.
And the underside of those balconies as well, and how that's treated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, we'd like to thank you for the presentation. Since this was a concept, we are not taking a vote. So thank you for your time and your presentation.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you. We will continue on with our agenda. That concludes the concept plan reviews. We'll move on to landmark nominations. Nothing scheduled for today. Section 106 environmental reviews. Nothing scheduled today. Then we'll move on to reports. Nothing for today. Meeting minute approvals. Mr. Pettit?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 5 meetings to approve today. They're all 5 of our previous meetings in 2020, January 9th, January 23rd, February 13th, February 27th, and March 12th. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes?
We have Mr. Harrison and Ms. Crowther with their hands raised. Not sure if those are both intentional.
Mr. Harrison, here, I was going to move for approval of the minutes.
A motion. Do we have a second while that's on the table?
I second the motion. It's Michelle Anderson.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Further discussion, Ms. Crowther, did you have a comment?
No, I do not believe she did.
Okay. Excellent. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? I'm sorry, Mr. Pettit, could you call roll call?
Thank you. Please unmute your mics. Ms. Anderson? I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Thank you. Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Dryer?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Ms. Trott?
Yes.
The minutes are approved.
All right, so we'll move on to administrative reports. Are there any administrative reports today?
I don't really have a report today. I just want the commission to be aware that the Cuyahoga County Land Bank is asking us to review the demolition of the Luther Moses House at I think it's 5611 Lexington. We'll probably be seeing that on one of our June agendas.
Thank you. And is there anything else on the agenda that I see? Or are we to adjournment?
I believe we are at adjournment, Madam Chair.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? This is new, but I guess part of our procedure.
I move that to adjournment.
I'll second.
All in favor? We can just say it out loud without having to take a roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your patience and we have respect for everyone to allow everyone to have a chance to speak. This will adjourn our May 28th meeting, and our next meeting will be on June 11th.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Adrian, whenever you come into Tremont, if you want a place to park, you can park in my driveway.
Thanks.
Have a great day, everyone. I need to jump into another meeting. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.